important for younger workers, particularly space time with executives. They want to be engaged. They want to be able to ask questions and get involved.
Like Washington and Randolph there. People aren't looking, and all of a sudden, guy goes, on the divvy, oh.
It's definitely different working with people that are fresh out of college than working with grown-ups. It's definitely a whole different set of needs that are there, and what's important to them is different. Making sure your input is different, and what their motivations are, and how quickly they want to move up. All that stuff impacts the generational aspect of that. Or you can talk to someone, yeah, I think this person
I cooked it all.
She cooked it? Okay. Well, to get this started, we have an amazing panelist up here, obviously. But before we get into the introductions, we like to do a little icebreaker to run fun facts. So Brittany, why don't you pick one of these?
So what's the question?
This one is,
This is something surprising about them.
tell us something surprising about yourself.
So we've had them anonymously do this, and then I read it off, and then they have to guess who said this.
Oh, I see.
So someone played college basketball. It wasn't Nick. Who played college basketball? Anyone have a guess?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Dave, did you play college
I
basketball?
did play college basketball. I made for my school. So my parents said either pick up the basketball or go pay for your school yourself. And
Well, you were a point guard, right?
I actually played power forward.
Yeah.
So I was very physical and kind of rough in the
No
middle.
idea what that means.
And so my job was to rebound, play good defense, and guard the toughest offensive player on the team. So,
Wow.
which was always fun. So if we won, you didn't really see me, stats or anything like that, but there was a lot of behind the scenes that I did. It really brought me into being a team player and appreciating and sharing the glory with everybody. So always fun and got to meet a lot of great people.
It was the humblest basketball story.
Oh, thank you. It was fun.
Were you the tallest person on your team?
I was not. So the tallest on our team was 6'9", and the tallest that I've ever guarded was 7'3".
Wow.
So he was right here. We won. I did my job, and life was good. But he was a tall cup of tea, that's for sure. But got to travel the world. Been to a lot of different. Got to go to Australia and play basketball and some other countries. But always fun, and it was a good learning experience, and met a lot of great people. So, all right.
Glad I pulled yours.
You did that on purpose.
Where did you go to school?
I went to William Penn University. Shout out to everybody online. No, I'm joking. Now we have some people online that'll be dialing in. But yes, small town Iowa. So. All right, but let's get back to what we're here for. And we always like to bring two of our finest, our best, our favorite customers and thought leaders into the panelists. Can I say anything else that will make you feel amazing about yourself, because we love you? But I have Jen here. She's from Allstate. Amazing. I'll let her kind of get into introductions. We also have Frank with Jet Support Services, another great group I talked about a little bit earlier as we were kind of sharing best practices. And then Brittany, as always, providing thought leadership. Just wanted to bring everybody together. But, less talking for me. Let's get the panelists kind of doing some introductions. Really what I want to kind of start off with each one of you. I know, Brittany, you've already done this. Jen, we'll start with you. If you could just tell us a little bit about, you. So, what company you're with, industry number of employees, why do you love working for your company? And then, talk just briefly about your employee survey strategies or continuous listening strategy.
Sure. So I'm Jennifer Acosta, and I oversee our employee survey work at Allstate Insurance Company. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Allstate, so I probably don't have to say too much about kind of what we do, but we protect about 16 million households from life's uncertainty through our auto and home and other insurance offerings. In addition to Allstate brand, we also have Encompass brand insurance and Esurance as well, and most recently Square Trade too. And all together across our companies that we own and our agents who are independent contractors as well as our employees, we are about 75,000 strong. The space that I work in is employee surveys only, so not the agents. So when we talk about just the employees, we're 45,000 employees across the U.S., Canada, Northern Ireland, and India. We have employees in a few different countries there. So why do I love working at my company? So many reasons. It's funny you brought up your friend who recently started there, and can't stop raving about the culture, because that was the main thing that I was going to touch on too. Allstate has a really strong mission around helping our customers realize their hopes and dreams, and really that mission to help people, especially in their time of need, and that service-oriented culture just rings so strong through our culture, and it makes it a really wonderful place to work. Everyone's so service-oriented, everyone is just there to help each other out and to do their best, and it just makes it feel like you're with a family when you're at Allstate. So I think the culture is one of the things that just makes us really unique and that I just love so much about working at Allstate. We also have this employee value proposition, which we call our good work, good life, good hands promise. And I think this really is like super apparent, and you really feel it when you walk like into Allstate. Specifically what I mean by that is that people really are given a opportunity to do meaningful work. And in my world, meaningful work has meant not only shaping these employee surveys and this employee survey program that I've been involved with for a number of years now, but also being able to be involved in some really cool and innovative work in the talent analytics space. So I should have mentioned this at the beginning, I'm a talent analytics manager. So my team does not only surveys, but we also do a variety of HR analytics, from like reporting and dashboarding through the employee survey work, through program evaluation, looking at like how well is our training programs working or our development programs working? Are they achieving the kinds of outcomes that we're expecting them to see? And then finally, this is the part that is kind of fun that I was going to touch on. We get to do some really cool and innovative analytics that not a lot of other companies are doing. So, for example, last year, funny story, so Brittany's husband used to work on my team at Allstate, and this was his project, actually, that I want to touch on. He built a predictive attrition model, and we're now rolling it out and implementing it. So it's really cool. We were able to predict the likelihood of our leadership population leaving with a decent degree of accuracy, and so now we're rolling that out. And we're designing interventions to do stay interviews and to try to retain this leadership level, this really highly valuable talent. And another really cool project that sort of like an R&D type of project that we're working on now is our first organizational network analysis at Allstate. And we're focusing on our leadership development program. So these are folks that come straight out of college, and they rotate for 3 years and develop, as you rotate through the company, develop an interesting network, right, that you might not otherwise develop if you didn't have that experience. So we're looking at how those patterns, those social networking patterns develop and how they predict outcomes such as retention and performance. So it's, not every company that allows you to do such cool projects just to try something new and to see what kinds of insights you can get. So I really enjoy that about my work. I mentioned the other parts of the EVP, so I'll just mention or explain what they are. So our Good Life Promise, I think also you really feel that, and that is our commitment to helping our employees live well in all areas of their life, not just their work life, but also their physical, emotional, and financial life or well-being, right? So we have all of these great programs to really make sure that our employees have a strong work-life balance and that they're healthy. We have training programs that help you really center yourself around a mission and to eat well, to exercise well. We offer training programs on all of those aspects. We have subsidized cafeteria options to encourage people to eat well, on-site daycare, which I really appreciate, and will continue to appreciate, and and just all sorts of great things in the on-site mindfulness and meditation, just all sorts of great things in the well-being space, as well as our Good Hands Promise, which is our community work, which you were talking about a little bit earlier.
Yes.
We're involved in a lot of great organizations, and we get to reach out to our community and give back that way. So hopefully.
A lot of great things, and Jen, she's being very humble. She actually just presented at SIOP recently, a couple times. It's one of our annual conferences that we all attend. So a great thought leader can bring a lot of insight. We'll keep this very informal, so we'll open it up for questions. But before we do that, I also want to get a brief introduction from Frank. So if you could just cover, I'll replay these questions. You know, your company, industry, you know, a little bit of number of employees. Why do you love working for your company? And talk about your employee survey continuous listening strategy.
Sure. Hi, my name is Frank Hatula, and I am the Director of Human Resources at Jet Support Services, Inc. in Chicago. We have about 215 employees worldwide in about 11 or 12 different countries, which is kind of cool. Our business model is we're kind of a cross between insurance and warranty programs for business jets. So think kind of like a health insurance for business aircraft. You may have heard of aircraft like Gulfstreams or Learjets, things like that. Our customers pay us a certain dollar amount per hour that they fly their aircraft. We manage their funds in a large trust, and then when they need maintenance on the aircraft, we'll pay for some or all of it, depending upon what program that they have with us. It's really much more of a financial and data tool more than anything, because then we can do things like we can predict out what maintenance needs will occur. We can predict out do we think that an engine will fail? We predict out what sorts of parts we might need, and we've added some additional value-added services over the course of the past couple of years, like a growing aviation parts business. We do also some things like advisory services, where we will provide certain services like valuing an aircraft during an inspection. We will be able to do appraisals and things like that. And now you think, aviation, are we all nerdy? Nah, not really. People are passionate about aviation. It's something that touches every area of our world. And but what we look for people is we look for people who have a true passion for aviation, for what they do, and for each other. You've heard the expression that we want the people who play nice in the sandbox. That is the type of people that we want. We want people who want to get out there and build relationships with their coworkers, because we believe strongly that if they care about the people that they are working with, they're going to be more engaged. They're going to be they're going to try to find creative solutions to problems if they exist, and more importantly, they're going to be invested in bringing in additional people who also share that same sort of camaraderie. We've been working with Dave for a number of years now on our employee surveys, and one of the things that we try to take from that each year is, good or bad, tell us the feedback. You know, I was talking with a few folks that are here a little bit earlier about, even our CEO takes a role in this, where he'll meet with employees and ask for that feedback, so that whether it's something that's harder to hear or not, if you don't get defensive on the feedback, then that feedback will continue moving forward. And so we have a strong community service component. We give our employees the ability to take a work day per year where they can go and volunteer in their own communities to be able to give back. We have what's called a culture club. That is an employee-run committee that they figure out what is it that our people want to do, and they do events around the office, and they are involved with different, not only social events, but also health and wellness events. So bringing in a chance to have a massage therapist come in for our employees from time to time, coming in and getting people involved with the Chase Corporate Challenge, something that, when I first started there, we hadn't been involved with, and now we're at a larger basis, so people can find ways, whatever their passion, to get involved. We have some teams during the summer that for like a softball team, a volleyball team. I think they're starting a dodgeball team. I caught wind about it. I'm just having horror stories in elementary school at that point. But kidding aside, we find ways to find, whether it's a guacamole contest for people that might be sharing a passion for cooking, whether it's finding an opportunity to have a job shadow day, so people that might be a little bit more disadvantaged, that don't have access to the downtown area, can come in and be able to learn more about our company, and have some role modeling. Coming from someone who was poor when I grew up, I never knew that an industry like this exists. I didn't know anyone in the aviation field. And so being able to bring in people from different socioeconomic groups, that's a hard word to say, bringing in people from different cultural backgrounds, bringing in people from different abilities that can come in and learn and see people who are that they can role model, that are role models for them, to realize that they can share in this wonderful industry as well. as a, we get involved from a global level. We've gotten involved in things as well, with the hurricanes and things like that that took place in Haiti. Large commercial aircrafts, like you think of a 747 or the big aircrafts you see at O'Hare Airport. Those aircraft are too large to get into some of these remote areas of Haiti, of other areas where there have been natural disasters. But our aircraft, because they're smaller, can get into there, and they bring in supplies, and we waived flight hours to be able, for some of our customers, to be able to go in and spend their time taking these supplies in. We've, at some point, with some of the stuff we had going on, Katrina, we sent people down there that at some point, some of our employees volunteered to go in and be able to provide some volunteer work, which was really cool. It makes you very proud to see that the company that you're working for really cares about what's going on in the world. It cares about people who may be less fortunate. I mean, you look, pardon me, our industry at times in the media sometimes gets bashed. Like, oh my God, you're thinking, oh, rich aircraft person, oh God, they're driving their private jet into things. It's like, no, people aren't vast in gold. Our aircraft can provide services to communities that need that service. You can't send a 747 to land on a small grass strip somewhere, but you can send a smaller business jet in there to help bring supplies and stuff. It's pretty amazing.
So, I thought this was a great opportunity to bring two different lenses. Two leaders that are doing great things within their organization. One that's, from an employee count, 200, that's experiencing some growth. Then you have Jen, you said 75,000 employees. So definitely a mix of perspectives here. What I wanted to do is, I have a list of questions here that I can get into, but I want to start, we've been spending the whole morning talking about employee engagement surveys and other surveys. I want to open it up to the group here. Are there any questions that you might have? And please take it easy on our guests up here, but obviously they're knowledgeable and have the experience. But are there any questions that you might have for them out of the gate before I lead into my questions? Go ahead.
Jen, how long has your program been on for the child care?
Oh, I don't know if I know the answer. Oh, you know what I do. So it has been, the on-site daycare has been there for, at least 22 years or so. And the reason I can tell you that is because I have an employee that works for me that went to the daycare center.
Well, I asked.
As a child, so I'm doing the math back. I'm like, he's like 26. He might have been 4 when he was there, so it's been at least 22 years.
So you're telling me that he was in daycare and now he works at Allstate?
Yeah, so his mother worked.
Wow,
So
that's early recruitment.
Yeah.
You might want to explore that as an early,
Feeder program.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
How do you count his tenure? Sorry.
So I asked because I'm wondering if it affects fertility rate.
If it affects fertility rate, I don't.
Like how many
know.
people have kids?
I mean,
you're a data geek, right?
that would
you
be
could do that.
fascinating.
Might be a good follow-up, but yeah, that's.
I mean, we do have just an amazing culture for working parents, beyond the daycare on site, which I just can't say enough how nice that is. I guess I've never experienced an alternative, but it doesn't seem good. So beyond that, just super flexible, working policies, around working hours and work from home and things like that. So I think that people with families find themselves really at home at Allstate in general.
Any other questions? What's another? That was a good question.
That was a really hard question.
Yes, that was a good one. Cool. What other questions? As we talk about employee surveys, they both conduct employee surveys and going through the journey. What questions might you have from maybe someone who hasn't conducted one and looking to start, or maybe you are conducting them and just have some follow-up questions?
Got one from online, Dave. What's your current survey participation, and how do you work to improve it?
Who would like to start off?
I will.
All right.
Our survey participation rate has ranged anywhere from 96 to 98%. it's one of those things that we're very proud of, and it tells us that our employees care. And I think that what starts it out is that we show them what are direct results that came from the survey. You know, we had this afternoon, we have our all-company quarterly meeting, and that was one of the things that came from one of our surveys. Our employees said, we want greater transparency. We want to see how business is doing. We want to see what the finances are. And so we built this in to be able to do presentations to share that. So our CEO really is one of the ones that spearheads the importance of the survey, and hey, I really want your feedback, and I want you to be able to tell me, how do you feel about the company, good or bad? Let's talk about that. If you're unhappy here, let's find how we make you happy here. You know, through it, whether it's through new assignments, whether it's through different challenging things, whether it's through you know, a change in benefits, whether it, you know, whatever those things are, you have to tell us. You can't fix what you don't know is broken. So, and people, because of there's that sense of openness and transparency, our people really are very good about responding and telling us feedback.
That's great.
I mean, we follow up with one more thing to add about that. I don't want to take up monopolies all the time. But one of the things that we do is we have some qualitative feedback sessions that which Dave came in and facilitated, because that allows us to not just look at the raw numbers. So if we're finding that there's a number of people in a certain commentary section said something that's just like, what do they mean by that? This guy right here can go in and say, hey, you know, I'm seeing that this pattern of responses on this. What did you mean? And because he's not, you know, from our management team, they're comfortable opening up to him and saying, this is what we think. We're really unhappy about, you know, a change in X policy, or, you know, a gym membership, or whatever the case may be. He can capture that more qualitative data from the response that we're just getting from the numbers, and then that way we can make sense behind not just how did we score numerically, but also why are we scoring numerically?
So kind of merging that data together.
Yes.
Okay. I think, Brittany, you were even talking about that qualitative, quantitative earlier in the session. Anything that you'd like to add to kind of, I know you also do focus groups and get out there and meet with.
Yeah, I think everything you're saying is spot on. I'm actually like, yes, everything you're saying. I was trying to say it earlier, but you're much more eloquent than I was. And it's real coming from you, you know. And I would just say, when I have clients who are thinking about, do I go with a shorter survey or a longer survey? Do I ask qualitative, and do we want to invest in all that, reading all the comments? I tell them, you know, the work is going to happen one way or the other, right? Like the same amount of work is going to happen. You either do on the front end, you have a lot of questions, you ask a lot of open-endeds, and you do the work that side, or you get meager amounts of qualitative and quantitative data, and then you have to do the focus groups on the back end. Like the work is going to happen, you just need to put it where it belongs. And so I think that's been my experience.
Jenna, you know, and to kind of piggyback off that comment, you've had some success on this last survey wave of driving stronger buy-in. Can you kind of talk about, you know, that experience?
Sure. So we recently redesigned our whole survey strategy. So there was a need to re-engage leadership and get buy-in, and just to give a high level on that redesign. We used to do the, you know, kind of a typical once a year annual, very long employee engagement survey, and then we reported it down to any leader who had 6 or more respondents got the same exact template kind of report, right? And we decided to redesign our survey because of a few reasons. One was we had been doing that same survey approach for a very long time. It was becoming stale. There was some considerable concerns around the credibility of the results. They were exceedingly favorable each year, and they just kept getting better and better and better. And our leaders would look at them, and it would just kind of, you know, would suggest that we don't have any problems, and they would feel like that wasn't really true, especially because when we would do external surveys through benchmarking consortiums or things like that, we wouldn't blow it away the same way that our internal survey did. We were just blowing away all the benchmarks, and so they felt like the results weren't accurate. And so, and then finally, we wanted a more frequent our leaders wanted a more frequent pulse on engagement. And so for those reasons, we redesigned our survey strategy, and we are now pulsing 4 times a year total. 2 of those times we focus on culture, and the audience is senior leadership, and 2 of those times we focus on manager effectiveness. And the audience there is every manager who gets at least 3 or more respondents. So like in the culture survey, we're keeping the results pretty high level because the issues that are being addressed in that survey are fairly high level. And then on the other side, on the manager effectiveness survey, we're pushing it down as far as we can. So that's the basic strategy. And so leadership buy-in. Even though we felt like we had some pretty solid content from our previous survey that our CEO was fairly attached to and our CHRO was fairly attached to, we really wanted to re-engage our leaders in the development of the content. So we partnered with TNS and we did a series of interviews with various stakeholders, some business leaders, some HR Center of Excellence leaders who had a stake in the particular content areas, maybe benefits, maybe leadership development or whatever it might be, right? And we had them analyze the content and help us understand what were we missing, right? Like what was important to them and that was an important outcome that would tell them that they're doing a good job that they would want to be measured against that wasn't in the survey. And so we refreshed the survey content to really measure the things that were most important to our leaders. And I think that that is probably the most critical thing that we've done to gain that leadership buy-in, because if your leaders aren't invested in the things that are being measured on the survey, then they're not going to be bought in to support that survey, to push communications to the employees to ask them to take the survey, which really helps with your response rate, circling back. And so I think that was important to our success of our new strategy.
That's great. That's great. Brittany, you were involved not in the Allstate project, but in a similar situation where to get senior leadership buy-in, we often, when we're doing these workshops, we ask, what are some of the biggest barriers? And senior leadership buy-in is always one that comes up, is how do we gain that support? And I think an example, Jen, you just mentioned, but any other examples from senior leadership buy-in that you've experienced similar or just want to share with the group?
I've had a few. I'm trying to think of what you're like trying to tee me up for. Two come to mind really quickly, and I'll be brief. But the first one was I was delivering an executive presentation to the senior leadership, and I was trying to impart to them just the importance of taking action. Right, the marquee question was, do you think results will be taken or action will be taken as a result of the survey? And really trying to create this burning platform for them. And the CEO came up to me after, and he said, you know, I come from a culture, he was new to the organization, he said, I come from a culture where employees believe that action will be taken based on the survey to such an extent that they're excited, they're hungry for the next survey. They want to feed the pipeline because they know if they give their voice to it, something will happen. It sounds like similar to your organizations, like the employees are, when's the next survey? When's the next survey? Like we know this system works, the proof's in the pudding, right? So they were really anxious to take the survey and continue to make it better because they felt like they were part of the process. So that's a senior leader being brought in because the employees are bought in, and I think employees are bought in because senior leaders bought in. It was this really great feedback mechanism.
So a little bit of that cycle.
Yeah, and the other side was, you know, as you're talking about survey development as well, we were doing a survey evaluation, just kind of diagnostic. It was 2 years since they had designed it. So we're just doing some factor analysis and like figuring out if they're getting their bang for their buck. And we had a few items earmarked for removal based on their performance. And at the last minute, I thought, I'm just going to do a gut check. So I went into the action planning tool and saw that actually one of the items that was earmarked for removal had like a third of the company teams had been taking action against that item. So while it wasn't really bang for the buck statistically, people really identified with that item, or at least thought it was important when they got with their team. So we decided to keep that item that year and bridge it, right, give them a path to kind of continue action, but like maybe harness it against this item. But we didn't want to pull the rug out from under them. Like, oh, you actioned all year on this, but we're not going to test that again, right?
So it was about keeping those similar questions year over year so you can see that.
It's about giving them that context and really honoring what they've been working on.
Well, I should throw my note cards out because I'm getting some good questions here online from the group. Open it up again to the floor. I know we worked, okay, go ahead. You came out right from the gate, Bob. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, just for Jen, in terms of the relationship between the customer experience, brand experience, and the EVP. Now with call centers being such the face of the business, right, with so many different options online and things like that, impact on the employee value proposition versus that enhanced customer experience through the call centers as those people become literally the face of the business for the customer. and how that may have, how that's evolved. Just knowing, for me, for example, a lot of times I talk with people in call centers, not with insurance, but any point of view, and they're nice people and they seem to be positive, but they don't seem to have the tools or really understand how to sort of create that experience that I'm hoping for as a customer. And
so getting back to the question, so
yeah, so in terms of that survey tool and sort of developing the leadership, how does it trickling down or how does it play into this enhanced customer experience when it becomes so big and there's so many different companies sort of plugging into that customer experience, people coming from different points of view?
So if I'm hearing it right, it's really focusing on the action planning piece.
The action planning,
how
right,
are you
right.
leveraging that
Yeah.
at the frontline leader level when you have 75,000 employees? You know,
Sure. So because you bring up call center specifically, I'm actually going to talk a little bit about work that we are doing company-wide, but it started in our call centers around continuous improvement that leverages surveys. So don't worry, I'm not getting too off track.
that's all right.
It's just, they're not my surveys that you guys know about.
Oh, okay.
But so continuous improvement it's really like a management philosophy, right? Where at the heart of it, it's about empowering that front line, and it applies very well to heavily process-oriented organizations or like call centers, which are also heavily process-oriented, but also kind of very bureaucratic in the way that most companies tend to be organized and customer and critical to the bottom line. You know, the first line or the first thing that the customers experience when they interact with the company. And so it's really a management philosophy that focuses on empowering employees to identify things that aren't working well and to solve them. And to kind of take away all the layers of bureaucracy that might get in the way of that happening really quickly and on the spot, so that they can really serve customers and satisfy customers in the moment. That's kind of the heart of continuous improvement. And so the way that surveys play into that is that we use this frequent pulsing barometer survey. And it's called a barometer survey because it's meant to be like a check. Take your temperature as a check, right? And it highlights anything that might not be working well from more of a cultural standpoint, right? So are employees getting their voices heard? Are they being listened to? Are problems getting solved quickly? Are decisions being made quickly? But it's kind of focused around those kinds of principles of continuous improvement, but it's getting that employee perspective. We also use customer feedback similarly in continuous improvement. And then there's a whole toolkit that these managers are given when they deploy through continuous improvement of ways to then act upon those survey results quickly. So the idea is that you should be able to solve these problems in a week, which actually sounds crazy to me, but that's the idea. I have not personally been through.
What I'm excited to hear is the barometer. I believe that's the tool we've developed for them.
Yes, you guys are doing that.
So thank you. We love the plug.
It is TNS, yes. But it's not me.
No,
It's outside my world. Yes, so it's all about solving these problems quickly, so that you do the survey, you review the results there's a daily huddle. So then once a week you would devote some of that daily huddle to looking at the results, and then break out immediately to action on anything that's like, being red flagged or coming up as a problem. And then they have their toolkit of like root cause problem solving approaches and things like that they can use to delve into that and to find solutions. So I think hopefully that answers your question a little bit about surveys in the call center.
And it's a similar tool, obviously their tool is a lot more advanced to what they have set up, but a similar tool is the on-demand tool that we're offering everybody free today. So if you want to take a look, that's kind of a do-it-yourself tool that we offer clients that we've enhanced majorly for their needs.
They basically got a souped up version.
Yeah, which is really good.
My understanding.
I did have one question, Frank. Obviously I've worked with you for a couple of years. Your company is going through some great growth, and opportunities. You mentioned you're going to be hiring quite a bit within the next few months, or maybe you're already in that phase.
Yes.
I talked to two people earlier, and they're kind of in a startup we're a smaller organization going through a lot of growth. How do you keep engagement through that process of growth? You know, as you want to keep that same culture and
I think that one of the most important things is letting the new employees know right off the bat what your culture is. Starting from the interview process, we talk about culture. We talk about what message is it that they want them to take out of their interviewing process. When they come to orientation, we talk about culture. What do they want them to understand about our company? So that during the whole process of coming in, looking at us, onboarding with us, they know, are we the type of company that they want to work for? Are we the type of the company that they feel that their passions can be shared? Are we the sort of company that they feel is going to be interesting work, that they can grow their career, recognizing that career doesn't always mean this, it sometimes may mean this, it might mean this. You know, it's a lot of lateral and diagonal as well. And so that they hear the message from us, but that it is also role modeled by our senior leadership. You know, it's one thing to hear a senior leader say, we want to be embracing everybody, but if the nonverbal message and what the employees are viewing is, you know, managers fighting with each other, people not being good to one another, people not being kind, that completely devalues the message that's being sent forth at that point. So they have to role model the behavior so that every step of the way, that new person is saying, this is who we are. You want to be part of us? Or if you don't, then you know that's okay. We'll find someone who does want to be part of us. So that it's hard. You know, I started at JSSI. There were about 45 people, and we had in one country we were in Luxembourg. But then as we've continued to grow, you know, we added more people. We added more offices. We added people in France, in Germany, in Austria, in Australia, and Hong Kong, and it's really cool for me because I never thought in my career I'd be getting people placed in Hong Kong and Australia and, you know, in Germany and the United Arab Emirates. I mean, it's really cool stuff. And so that's one of the things is having people understand that, especially for those people that are startup growth mode, your life will change. Your people will, when they have 5 people, are going to have to wear every single hat in the company. You're going to be an accountant. You're going to be a counselor. You're going to be a financial person. You're going to be a web developer. You have to. You might end up coding in C. You never know. But you have to recognize that as you continue to grow, find the specialization opportunities where you can, and be willing to not take an approach of, I'm going to withhold information. It's scary for people sometimes at a small company to want to share that information because for them, that information is there, oh, well, because I know this, they're not going to get rid of me. But if they feel safe to give feedback, if they feel safe to share, and others are sharing back with them, at that point then they both have an enriching experience. So that Mary Jo may figure out that, you know what, I really like coding. You know, Brian may figure out, you know what, I hate coding, I like accounts payable. And it allows them to discover their passions really in a very safe environment, because you're going to have a chance to do so many different things that you normally wouldn't do in that role. And so as you continue to grow, that starts to build up, most importantly, leadership opportunities. Because if you go from a company of 10, now you're at 15, now you're at 30, now you're at 50, now that you're at 100. And so you've had the safety net of being able to learn along the way that, okay, I've never managed anyone as a 24-year-old. So, okay, here I am. Now I get to manage 2 people. That's a lot easier to manage 2 than it is to manage 100 in a call center, right? And so they have a chance to realize that all of those growth opportunities will take place. And so then managers have to then keep that culture opportunities going. Keep talking about it. Keep saying, this is who we are. This is why our JSSI experience is important. So it's constantly driving that sense of being part of a family, if you will.
So if I'm hearing, start from day one, give that opportunity to spring your wings a little bit and fly. You know, it's interesting. One thing that we do as a best practice, Kantar TNS, is during the interview process, we'll ask, what's your favorite candy bar? And on the first day you show up and your candy bar is sitting there right on your desk, you know, with everything else that's ready, which is always a nice. So I asked most of the panelists what their favorite candy bar. We have Twix and M&M's, or peanut M&M's.
Peanut M&M's.
I always wanted to do a study in my psych days of what does that mean? What if your favorite candy bar is this? But you know, it's those small things that I think, you know, whether you're a part of a larger organization or smaller organization, from employee count.
Yeah,
is
they have to
doing
feel
those.
to matter. You know, that's one of the things. One of the things that we do along that same line is, you know, you may not have an employee that's going to start for 2 weeks or 4 weeks, or if you're overseas, it may be 3 months, and you don't want to have an opportunity where that employee hears nothing from you. Because at that point, it's like, did I make the right decision? People make a decision, sometimes they second guess those decisions. So if a week or two later, you're saying, handwritten note from the manager saying, hey, I'm really excited you're coming to join us. Here's some JSSI hat for you. Here's a JSSI shirt. I want to let you know we were thinking about you. And then that way, at least they get it in the mail completely unexpected, and they're like, wow, this is really cool.
So it's all those small things that
It's little touches to help them out. It might be hard to do that at Allstate, you know, something like that, because it probably would get really expensive for you guys.
Well, I'm sure.
But you guys have such an amazing culture from people that I know that witnessed this firsthand. It's like, it's exciting to see all the things you do. I'm like making these mental notes of, what's Allstate do?
I'm sure you probably do small things, you know, out of the gate, just to, you know, as a manager, as a leader, to, you know, engage your employees early and often. You know, anything from your stance as, you know, in your role, your team really focusing on engagement from day one. You know, what do you do? What do you look at? You know, any best practices to share?
Sure. So I am kind of all about meaningful work. And so one thing that I really like to do is you really get to know employees and what they're interested in and what they want to be doing, and really try to make those opportunities happen for them. It's not as a tangible of an answer as the candy bar, but I think it does make them, I mean, first of all, it keeps them engaged in their work.
Yes.
Secondly, I think they feel cared about, or that I have this invested interest in making their jobs fun. That, you know, it's not, that my interest isn't just about work getting done, that I really do want them to enjoy what they're doing. And so that's one way that I kind of share a similar cultural sentiment as
Yes.
to what you're talking about.
I could see the chocolate lasting maybe 30 seconds. I could see, you know, having a manager sit down and have that conversation lasting a lifetime. So, you know, two different things. So, I'm going to pull it back. Oh, did you want to add?
I was just gonna say, I'm hearing both of them say what I was talking about earlier this morning about that passion drive. I mean, you're talking about keeping people safe in the air and taking care of your people. You're talking about helping people live their happiest lives. I think I'm paraphrasing. Or so.
Sure, I like it. It's better than how I put it.
It's yours. But essentially, you know, both on the customer side and the internal customer, your employees. And it's really about helping people fulfill their purpose and making sure that their work is connected to what that is. You're like, we're literally keeping these planes in the air. We're literally getting them onto the fields where no one else can get to. And you're saying we're really delivering, helping people become whole again, right? But being whole yourself in the process. So, and those are the people you want doing the work. I want someone saying, is this aircraft really actually safe? You know, are we predicting to a higher degree when the maintenance is going to need to happen so that we can make sure that, you know, we're saving lives?
Right.
Or delivering this food and there's not a mechanical. I'm sorry you don't have water today, guys, because we couldn't get the plane
Right.
there. You know, and you're putting this together too. So we had a workshop a few months ago where Rudy from your team came and spoke. And it was a morning session with Second City, so as we built it as being really fun, and Rudy spoke first and basically laid out this time he went and helped a tornado like ravaged town, and they were out there like picking things up, and someone said, can you help my grandma? So they went and like sat with the grandma and brought her water, and I forget the whole story, but essentially made everyone cry.
They weren't expecting that emotion.
Yeah, I was on the panel, I'm like, oh my god, we didn't prep for this at all. And we were all in tears, and I thought, you know, I said to the crowd basically like, when you came to Second City, I bet you think we're going to make you cry at 9 a.m.? This is a bit of a switcheroo old Rudy pulled, but you know, that's the guy I want running data analytics, is the guy who's thinking, how can I get, you know, an ounce more pleasure or purpose-filled day from my employees to help these customers, because he knows where the rubber meets the road. you know, I want that person being innovative and asking those critical questions versus just being like a report monkey, right?
Mhm.
Run these analytics, tell us what it means, we may or may not do something with it, your job is to be the cog in the wheel. And you both are talking about the culture and the mechanisms in the work and in the day-to-day that help that happen.
Mhm.
And that's when you talk about survey and insights leading to action and leading to actual change, like, you guys are where it's at. And what you both are saying is kind of true for the other one. Like, he's saying stuff, I'm like, I know that's happening, and you're saying, I know that's happening. So
So-
it's just,
Yeah.
these guys are awesome.
I'm looking at time here, we have a little bit of time for a few additional questions. We got a question from this side, we got from here, I saw a hand go up, go ahead.
I'm just like curious, what would be some of the points that the invoices in the survey they're like most satisfied or like less satisfied in both companies? It's just like curiosity.
Do you want to start? or-
Sure. I mean, for us, I think they're most satisfied about people, the people that they work with. They're most satisfied about interesting work because every day is different. They most satisfied about being able to explore their passions, kind of going back to that. And they're most satisfied with their manager cares about them. And things that they're least satisfied about is sometimes when you go through growth phase, you get into work-life balance issues because you might be understaffed. You need 3 more people, but by golly, I can't fill those 3 spots with the right people, so we might have to work a little bit of extra time at some point. And so recognizing that, hey, technical services team, I promise I'm working on this. You won't have to work like this forever. We're working to get these spots filled. We want to get the right people. We're just not trying to fill the shoes. We want them to come in and help join our mission. And so sometimes there's a policy change that we have to explain to them. We made the decision to bring our people. We had a much more flexible flexible telecommuting policy. And we really, as part of our approach to try to make sure we're keeping our culture, we started bringing people back into the office. We followed suit with places like Yahoo, which were starting to bring their more remote workers into the office because we wanted to see everybody every day. We want to give people a chance to engage. And then some of our remote workers, that's part of one of the things. We do have probably about 40 to 50 people who work out of home offices. And for them, sometimes they're like, well, I don't feel as connected to Chicago as everybody else does. So we're trying to find ways that we can help get them engaged with what we're doing. And having video conference calling sometimes is helping with us. Giving them the opportunity to try to connect with one of the office that might be a little closer for a holiday party, for example. Something like that helps them to maintain that feel. And then finally, I think sometimes we want to make sure that they're aware of, from a transparency standpoint, where we're going as a company. Because sometimes if we have an all-company meeting, the word goes out, our CEO tells us what's happening, that person may be sick that day or missed it, and so maybe the word doesn't get down to them that this is the exciting thing going, well, I didn't know about this XYZ. Well, we talked about it yesterday at the all-company meeting, and so then they may miss that. So that's one of the things that they say, well, I wish we could do better on.
Do you want me to answer? Or do you
Yeah,
want me to
go ahead,
answer?
real quickly, and then we'll get to this last question. Go ahead.
I'd love to hear you talk about how the things that people are more satisfied with at your company are the people, because that's the same at Allstate.
Yes.
So your the manager, questions about the manager and your coworkers are always really, really, really favorable. And then some of the areas that we year after year after year see the lowest scores are pay, benefits, and career opportunity and recognition. So I think some of those, I would be willing to bet that every company has the lowest scores on pay and benefits. I think recognition is the most interesting one that I feel like we should be able to nail that one. So we're still working on recognition. I think what recognition means to people varies by person. What people want from recognition varies. Might be more complex than we've been treating it.
I always say that recognition is kind of like eating cake. As you see that back there, it's that first bite's amazing, but if you ate that whole cake, same thing as getting recognition, you start to resent it. And so you got to constantly figure out how can you make it fun, and you want to,
We have a program that we created called PROPS, which for an aircraft, a prop, propellers essentially for short, but the acronym for that is Personal Recognition and Phenomenal Service. And it's a peer-to-peer program. So if someone helps out someone else, they can nominate them for props points, and then they get manager sees it, they get awarded those points. A manager can nominate an employee can nominate a manager, and it's a way for people to say, hey, I appreciate you. I appreciate you going above and beyond and helping me, Jess, on this project I worked on yesterday. Hey, I'm acknowledging you, for staying late, Dave. Thanks for staying and helping me when I was here till, 9 o'clock or whatever it was, working on a project I had to get out. It's ways for people to recognize each other. And then that way, they can use their points to do a rewards mall. We used to do many years ago. We had the catalog of stuff, which I was just kind of like, ugh. But the options weren't exciting. So we went with a broader rewards mall, so really people could focus on what are those items or objects or services that matter most to them. Maybe for me, maybe I want a movie ticket, but maybe she wants a massage, or maybe she wants a set of tools, or maybe he wants a baby seat for his car. So that way it's directly tied in to those things that matter to them, and I think happiness kind of bridges a long way with that. I've seen research that says that people will treat our customers in direct proportion to how they feel the company's treating them. If they feel that the customer is wronging them in some way, or the company's wronging them in some way, or that they're not being treated fairly, or their manager is horrible for that, they're not going to be giving their best every day to the customers. And I come at that with that perspective because at some point in my history, our customer service team reported up through me. So I had a lot of connection with those calls and things like that.
Well, I do want to, and I apologize.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. I want to be.
One more question.
Yeah, there was one more
here.
question.
No,
They're all good comments here. I just want to make sure we get to the last question here.
I would like to ask you what specific programs or techniques do you have to help develop trust between managers and their reportees or their employees?
And trust is such a hot topic for a lot of our clients, and we tend to be consulting on trust more and more when we're working with clients. Any broad examples where you might be working with manager just trying to build that trust?
Well, specifically programmatically, the only thing that comes to mind is like in our standard new leader training that everyone who becomes a new leader is required to go through. We have a number of segments of that really focus on open and honest dialogue, feedback, giving and receiving feedback, and I think all of those, having difficult conversations is a third one, and I think all of if you're doing that well, if you're able to have those difficult conversations, if you're able to have that open and honest dialogue, if you're able to coach authentically, if you're able to give feedback in a healthy way, I think that all of that contributes to building that environment of trust with your direct employees. So just programmatically, which was sort of your question, I think that's kind of how it's addressed. At least that's what's coming to mind for me.
For us, we did a series of live trainings where we had, in fact, right here in this location, we brought in some outside trainers to do some sections on coaching and on feedback and on relationship development. And one of the most important things was having managers practice those skills. Telling someone that they're doing something, they could be doing something better, is difficult, particularly for younger new managers. And so being able to, in a safe environment, practice what they're doing. It might feel silly for them, but being able to say, hey, Dave, I've got some concerns over some things that I've observed lately, and let's talk about them. I want to help you take an opportunity for a teachable moment here, and me practicing those skills means that he's going to learn something, and then the colleagues around it can say, hey, I've had that similar sort of situation. Here's how I approached it, or a way to fine tune that. So people are sharing ideas, and someone will take something out of that exercise. It's a way to, I guess, take them outside of their comfort zones.
So, I'm looking at time here. I do selfishly have two questions. One thing that I often find is you're trying to move forward on an engagement or survey strategy. It's that first step to to get started. And sometimes when you attend events like this, it brings a lot of energy and excitement and pumps us up to go out there. And I was listening to a presenter once, and he said, I challenge you, when you go back to the office, don't just touch your toe into the water. He said, I want everybody to do a cannonball, and it showed a picture of a little kid really jumping in the water and splashing and making some waves. So the question that I have for you is, is there any feedback on, getting this going or adding spark or a quick win that you've seen that's really helped move the survey through the getting that buy-in or having an impact? Does that question, I know I said a lot there, but does that question make sense?
I'm excited to hear what Jess has to say.
Jen, yes.
Oh, Jen, I'm sorry, Jen.
Yep.
So I think that people are hungry for feedback and are hungry for data, and so I just don't know that it's a really hard sell. Like if you tell people, like if you tell your leaders, your management, we're gonna provide you with feedback and data and information on how you can improve. I think, as long as it's meaningful and it's measuring the things that they're important to them, like it's a decently easy sell. Admittedly, Allstate's had a survey for like as long as, forever, right? So I wasn't really involved in like the initial introduction of a survey to Allstate, and so I guess I haven't really had to kind of start from scratch and like build that buy-in. But anytime we do, ad hoc surveys, surveys that are focused on a particular issue, right? So recently we did a big survey on benefits and around like what employees value most in terms of benefits to inform our benefits redesign, and that was a really fun and easy sell because it was employees couldn't wait to they couldn't wait to tell us what they wanted in their benefits package, right? It was such like kind of a clear line of sight to them, like the feedback they were giving and what they imagined could happen with that feedback, and so I think if you make the content important to leaders and important to the employees too, like in the benefits example, people are, and your penguins too, they're pretty excited to give their input. Everyone likes to be asked what they think.
Yes, what they think. And as long as they feel like the feedback is being listened to and acted upon, that's the most important thing. I think the biggest thing with any sort of survey practice is, it's easy to become really, really excited, but it's a big well. So going out there is recognizing that you're not going to change the world overnight. There's going to be things that are going to do really, really well as an organization. And from organization to organization, that will change. And there's also going to be things that are going to be a bit of a challenge. So those things that you're going to focus on the low-hanging fruit. If there's some things that are easy, that there's a policy that you can redesign, or ways to clarify, or one-on-one meetings with the managers, things that can be easy wins to say, hey, look, this is something that you came for out of the survey. You said you wanted more time with your managers. Okay, brought to you by the employee survey. Brand that. If you've got an email that talks about things you're doing from the survey, add a little logo that tells people your feedback and action is going to is the reason why we're doing this. Focus on those 3 or 4 things at a time, and try to get some people involved with that from the company, so that it's not just you as the leader saying this is what we're going to do, but rather it's you and a group of employees, or just a group of employees saying this is what we want to focus on, this is what we're excited on doing. So that way it's not overwhelming, because it can be, especially as the first time you do a survey, you're thinking, oh my God, please let this be good, please let this be good, please let this be good. And the results may be positive and they may not be, but that's the point, to not get discouraged. Okay, saying here's how we can improve the things that we do well, and here's the things that we want to focus on now, so that as long as we're moving the needle forward each time, we're in a better place, and employees then continue to embrace the process, and that's what's most important.
It's not an affirmation exercise.
Right.
It's facts are friendly exercise.
Yes.
Yeah. It's definitely, that's what it is.
Final thoughts to kind of go through here. Brittany, would you like to start with this as a final thoughts for the panel discussion?
Oh my goodness, final thoughts. I wasn't ready. I'll put it back to the panelists, because I've got all day to give final thoughts.
Okay.
But I will say from both of you, what's your kind of message in a bottle? Like if you were going to see these guys on the elevator, it's the last thing you say to them, what's your message in a bottle? Whoever this reaches is going to be helpful about employee engagement.
Any final thoughts?
I mean, we can go so many directions. So, I mean, I think if you're starting out with employee engagement, maybe my top advice would be around, like two things. We've talked about both of them already, but one is getting that leadership buy-in and making sure you have strong sponsors from the onset so that you know that you have people that are going to be backing and supporting this work and making sure it's successful. And it's not just you all on your own, right, trying to make it successful. And the second piece I think is know what you're going to do with the results when they come out. So have a plan for how you're going to action on them. Yeah. Because like I loved so much of what you were saying, and it seems like your culture's so aspirational. But like the number one thing that will keep employees engaged in an engagement survey year after year is seeing action being taken on those results. So and it's really easy to forget that piece when you're designing the survey and like trying to figure out all the details of the administration. It's really easy to forget what are we going to actually do with the results when they come out. So I think paying attention to that on the onset and having a plan for that, strong tools or a process that you're gonna employ to make sure that action is taken, I think would really go a long way in terms of just like continuing momentum around your survey program.
I will say nailed it. Yes. I think also is letting people know that you care about what they have to say in the survey. It's kind of piggyback on what you're saying. But number one, people have to feel that they matter. If people don't feel that they matter, they will not give you honest results. If people don't feel that they matter, they're not going to care enough about it to even bother, and that's what drops response rates. And letting people know, sharing the message of the passion that people bring to the organization, and every organization hires people because they feel that that person is a good corporate culture fit. I believe strongly in train for skill, hire for attitude. If people come into your organization with the right feel and that they come in and want to join your family, if you will, they're going to care and start building that trust early. And so recognizing and letting employees know, communicating the things that you're accomplishing as a result of that survey. So again, it goes back to making sure that they know what's happening with the results and that things are occurring. It might be slow, but things are occurring.
Well, I'm looking at time here. I think we could talk, with both of them all day long, or at least I could. Two, extremely smart and subject matter experts in the field. So I really appreciate both of you, taking time to sit on the panel, and we did a little bit of prep work behind the scenes. So I truly do want to thank both of you, and obviously Brittany up here too, adding.
These guys are amazing. I just echo what they say.
But I know we maybe have people over the internet, but I would like to give these guys a little bit of I think from here we'll take
We'll take a 5-minute break.
Everybody stand up, and I know right after lunch you can kind of hit that wave. So stand up and get the blood flowing, and we'll be coming back for some more. But thank you to both of you.
It's very fun.
I like every time you talk about us, you're like hugging. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I think that's important. People have to matter. If they don't matter, then they're not going to want to give their best every day.
When people talk about metrics that matter, it's like metrics. Yeah.
Triple metrics.
I love it.
That's why we do what we do.
Yes, relax.
It was so nice to meet you.
I know we're more than anyone
I can't
else.
wait to go home and look up your company.
It's a really awesome place to work, and the thing is, I know we talk about growing pains and stuff like that. Been there, when I first started there, I'll breathe my allergies here. Excuse me, I'm sorry. When I first started there, it wasn't uncommon for managers to follow each other down the hallway screaming at each other. This was 16 years ago, and we said, no, that's not happening here. But we had to make intentional culture choices to make sure that we got rid of the behaviors that we don't want. We don't want our employees seeing managers getting.
We appreciate you guys. Awesome. Thank you. That's exactly what we were looking for. All righty, my friend.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So
Game
I'll go
review.
and grab my,
Yeah. But honestly, you guys, a lot of what you said I talked about this morning. I'm like, yes,
So-
go, Jen, go, Jen, go, Jen. experienced those? Yeah. When my clients ask me how frequently they should be pulsing, what do you think I answer them?
It depends.
Quarterly?
Huh?
Quarterly?
Quarterly? That's a nice best practice. It's a nice kind of Goldilocks approach. It's not too often, it's not too often. But that's not my answer all the time. I heard it depends. Depends on what?
A lot of things.
What's the short answer?
Depends what you're looking for.
You looking for? You guys all have good ideas. I'll just tell you what I was going to say. I say, how quickly can you take action? Right? Don't pulse unless you're ready to do something. Pulse with intentionality. Just like Jen was saying, we ask questions because we know what we're going to do with that data. Don't ask questions you don't know what the answer could be and aren't ready for it. And then select the number of survey items. So, I've seen surveys that are 4 questions. I've seen surveys that are 1 to 15, 3 to 6, 16 to 30, and that can depend on, are you really just dishing out your census survey, so maybe a 30-plus item survey to just half your population, right? It's dependent on your sampling size. Does that make sense? Most pulses are probably like 12 to 15 questions, because that way you have enough information, or you've got a range of ideas. You're not just I'll scenario this. If I ask a quick pulse and I ask 4 questions, and they're not all about the same thing, but it's like, how satisfied are you with your immediate manager? Do you have the resources you need to do your job? One maybe engagement question, like how connected do you feel, something around that, and then one other question about teamwork. You're sharing the workload effectively, and I get that survey back. Is it easy to take action based on that feedback?
No.
It's kind of all over the place. I kind of don't have enough information. Maybe that item went down and I don't know why. Maybe I didn't ask qualitative follow-up information. So when you really limit yourself on items, either have a very narrow, as you said, scope, so 4 questions about the same thing, or have really specific questions and you're just kind of doing it to get after a certain thing. And that's this key of defining the survey content. And then I won't belabor this, but we talked about it a little bit. These are some examples of how this would play out, right? So sampling, who you're sampling, how frequently, how many items, and then some of the outcomes you could be looking for. So this equation example case study is going to be here for you to check out.
And I literally, earlier, when I snuck out here at 11, I was doing a prospect call with the client, and they switched to pulsing from their annual survey to pulsing, and I said, oh great, we've helped a lot of clients switch, and we've helped a lot of clients switch back to an annual survey. And at the end of the call, she said, this is just a discovery call to learn more. We're actually having a lot of issues with this pulsing. We're getting all this great information, but it's, before we can act on it, it's the next survey, and then, it's kind of like, working on the line where now you have all these parts backing up and you're trying to make the widget. So, I think it's important is to really understand what's that end goal and do we have the time and the time and energy to be able to act on the information. So, interesting, but I wanted to share that.
I'm so glad you said that. You are sneaky fox, Dave. We've helped people transition to pulses and transition back. Yeah, I can't tell you how many clients have started, either they've had a census, they move to just pulsing, they say, oh, we really want the census back, and they do the hybrid approach. That's really best practice, is this hybrid approach where you have your census, you have your robust cadence step exercise where it's more of a research dig. You really get to understand deeply your culture and where you're at, and that you can do all those big analyses, your regression analyses, you can look at all your demographics, everyone's represented. It's an amazing feat. And then the pulses to help you quick check and continuously improve. That way the data doesn't go cold, it doesn't go stale, and then you're not taking action 8 months later based on something that may be outdated. Make sense? So that balance is really key. We've talked about a couple of these. These are just some scenarios as well where the type of pulse that you'll take. So mini quarterly pulse to engage all survey groups. Again, this is just kind of a follow-up engagement pulse. Maybe you're digging into some of those items and checking growth. Low scoring group pulse, remember that scatter plot I showed you before with the swan and the scorpion? So let's say we took Tony's team. I can't believe I remember that name. Pull it out of thin air, but you take his team that's struggling and maybe you have some follow-up questions for them. we want to give this guy a little more guidance on what's working and what's not. So let's do a follow-up. These were your low-scoring 3 items. These were your top 3 scoring items. You know, are these still strengths? Are these still opportunities? How have you moved the needle? And let's give some qualitative ability for your people to give you more feedback, right? You should be having conversations, but this also helps even the tone, right? Communication might be a problem, honesty, trust might be a problem. So maybe the focus groups he's doing or the one-on-ones are paying off, but maybe not yet, right? So the survey is a nice way to diversify those tools. Ad hoc on-demand pulse surveys, again, so this could be, you know, we're looking at new hires, doing an exit interview, exit survey. You know, custom surveys, let's see. You know, I think these are great because they do help you show reactivity. So I had a client, they put in a new pay system, and it changed pay grades for some people. Not everyone was impacted, not everyone was impacted a lot, but it was enough that it kind of shook everybody up. Net across the organization, everyone was better off, but they still had to impression manage, right, or perception manage this. And so they launched this ad hoc survey after the fact, about 2 weeks after, 2 pay cycles later, so everyone kind of had a chance to shake out, you know, questions, got to kind of get used to it, and they got to understand really how that was felt throughout the organization and how that was impacted so they could continue to perception manage. Does that make sense? Or make some last minute tweaks. Perfect. And then we've got the service QC pulse. So I was talking with Charles at the break about the connection between employee experience and customer experience. We're going to talk about that more tomorrow, like really in depth. But this is a proxy measure for customer surveys. Who here is familiar with customer feedback surveys? You've probably taken one. How was your trip to Walgreens today? I entered sweepstakes. I don't know if I'm going to win, but I gave you feedback anyway because I'm in the survey business. Right, so all these things. So who can guess what the response rate on customer feedback surveys is? 30%? 30%?
10?
Are you guessing or do you know 30%?
Guessing.
It's like 6 to 9%. It's real low, okay? It could be higher. I mean, if I had like a mom and pop shop and I knew everyone was coming in or I was really threatening, maybe I'm getting 30%. But it's usually like 6 to 9. It's really low. So, and those people are probably what? You're really, really happy customers or you're really mad customers. So you're probably getting this dichotomy of feedback. So to really understand the fuller extent of the customer experience at your location, let's say like a Foot Locker or an enterprise rental car center, you know, this is a employee provided survey about how they think the customer experience went.
Oh.
Right? Were you able to provide the service? Do you think most of the customers you've interacted with in the last 6 weeks are, you know, satisfied? Are they going to come back? Are they going to choose us again? Things like that. Are they going to tell people they had a good experience? So instead of that NPS score coming directly from the customer, it's coming from the employee. And then we're asking follow-up sample questions as well, like did you have the resources and training and technology you needed to deliver a good customer experience? So it's kind of tying that together of, do you think they had a good experience? What do you think helped or hurt that, right? Do you have the training you need? Are you understaffed? Did you see someone walk out the door because no one came and talked to this person and help them really understand, right? Did you have an Angus situation at my Mac store that I talked about? Things like that. And so this helps get ahead of what would have been a lagging indicator of, you know, are you going to get better or worse customer feedback? How are your sales going to look? Right? All those kind of metrics that matter to senior leadership. Now you're hearing from employees before that comes out how they think it's going. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's a nice proxy measure because even if this is, let's say this is 30% feedback, that's still 10 times what they're used to on the customer side. And it also helps the employees feel like they're empowered, they have a voice. This goes directly to the manager. The manager can say, oh, you know what? I'm going to train them on this new thing because they didn't like it, or the store layout isn't making sense. Let's change that. You can make rapid adjustments to impact the customer experience right away. Does that make sense? All right. So just a few examples of the pulsing. So this is one of my favorite client examples. This is mine. This is the Northeast client. And they do a census every year, and every other year they do quarterly pulses. All right, so it's either a census or a pulse year, which I love. And the pulse year, they've split up their primary survey into 4 pieces. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, let's say they do a full census survey one year, and then they do the first half of the survey. So we'll include core items like their engagement survey, right, and a few other key things that they said they're working on based on the feedback from the census. But then let's say, you know, this is going to be the quarter of teamwork and communication. So they're just asking questions about that. If their managers and their leadership know that we're going to be asking those 6 questions on teamwork and communication What am I getting ready for before the survey even goes out? Maybe I'm doing a webinar on how to communicate to your teams. Maybe I'm doing some training on teamwork building, or maybe we're doing some exercises. Maybe we have a company picnic. You know, we're launching some initiatives to really build that information, or we're just getting managers ready. Like we're readying the troops, like I said, we're getting everyone ready. So when that feedback comes back, either it's great or it's a problem, right? We're ready to take action because we don't have time to cascade everything down. We don't have 6 months to get this going. We have 6 days, 6 weeks, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So locked and loaded because you know what's coming. You know this is coming. You know the next survey. You know the next survey. You know that as we go around the clock, Q3 is going to be immediate manager. So going up to immediate manager, what am I doing? I'm training people. I'm getting job aids ready, right? I'm getting kind of their context prepared so that when that data comes back, they know exactly what to do. We could even have decision trees, right? We're asking 4 questions on immediate managers, guys. Here's what the 4 questions are going to be. If it comes back high, here's what you do. If it comes back low, here's what you do. High, low. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they're not like, what do I do? It's like, we have talked about this. You have resources. You've got a mentor. We've locked and loaded it for you. You're ready to go. Isn't that way better than just having this amorphous, like, 36%? What does that mean? You know, all this stuff, right? So this is probably the best example I can give you of quarterly pulsing and being intentional about it. All right. Jumpstarting leader buy-in. So it's going to walk us through, I'm going to time check here quick. We're almost at 3 o'clock. I know we end at 4. How much time do you want for the change management exercise? An hour? So I'm going to skip this. These are going to be available for you. Basically, these are case studies about when we talk about developing leaders, making the data relevant to them, okay? So we've got a problem here. We've got a goal that they want to achieve. We're bringing the data and action to them, and it's the WOOFM, the what's in it for me, for managers to kind of bring home why we're pulsing, why we're surveying, why we're doing this intervention, and kind of bring it all together so you can tell that story and communicate. So I had 3 of these. I'm going to go through to the punchline. Punchline is there's 4 kinds of data. You can tell me what those 4 kinds of data are. It's on the screen. What's this kind of data? Seriously. Descriptive. Okay. What is an example of descriptive information? You scored 87% on the survey. Neat, Brittany.
Yeah.
What does that mean, right? So I described it. Doesn't really help you. Diagnostic. Elaborate on the 87%. What's an example of making that now diagnostic information? Same number, now it's diagnostic. 87% is good. You were at 47% last time. You have trended up, my friend, significantly. Also, you're over your norm. So contextualizing it, now it's diagnostic, right? So kind of, I don't know anything about blood pressure, so I go to the doctor and the nurse does the thing, and she's like, oh, you're whatever number over whatever number, and walks away like I'm supposed to know what that means. I'm like, am I going to live? Is that good? I don't know. Every time it's different. I have no clue, right? So the descriptive is not helpful. Diagnostic, now I know a little bit more about how I stand, right? So most leaders get to at least diagnostic, right? The heat map is either red or it's green, and I know where I stand. So that's helpful. Predictive. What is this? That's where everyone wants to get right. That's how you guys demonstrate value. If you're bringing in a survey or anything, we want to predict this. So when I talked about the engagement index, I talked about those enduring attitudes, the head, heart, hands piece, the affective, cognitive, behavioral, right? We're trying to predict how people are going to behave based on how they reported in through the survey. So you want to be able to predict you're at 87%. There's these other things going on. We know what's driving that 87%. If you can move these 3 things, right, we can predict with a certain level of reliability that this next thing's going to happen. So we're kind of predicting the future, yes?
So you get into the more so the analytics, and I'm curious about what you see in the field as far as like client readiness for predictive and prescriptive. I would assume they're not really at that point where you kind of prescribe.
Yeah. So we've gotten to a point where we have made it simple. So it's a good question. I would say 5 years ago, most people just stopped here, and that was a lot of the problem. Okay, great, it's good or it's bad. You're not telling me where to go. Okay? Well, you're on I-70 right now. All right, do I get off? What exit do I get? I don't know what to do, right? Like, they have no idea. So now we get into predictive, so we're running these regression models, and we're letting them know, like, here's your top 3 opportunities, here's your top 3 strengths. And we put it in an algorithm that further contextualizes it. So all these kind of criteria I've been talking about, I'm talking about internal benchmarks, external benchmarks, trending information, how you compare to others in your group. You know, is it a driver of engagement? All these things coming together, we put that into an algorithm and consider for them those contextual markers. So it's basically a model, and then we tell them, so based on this, but all of this, we're bringing it home, these are your top 3 things. Like, if you're going to do anything, do these 3 things. So we're predicting, we're saying if you do these 3 things, your scores are going to go up. Like, these are the most important. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. So we've gone to predictive. What's prescriptive? So everyone wants. Magic pill? Literally a prescription, like an RX, right? So prescriptive is saying, like, what should you do next? So when I talk to, or actually, so she let slip that, Jen let slip with my husband, who used to work on our team, and he had a leader come and ask him, so if my team wants to save money, what are the 2 things we should do to save money? He's like, that's a good question, I don't know. And she thought, like, in the tool on the dashboard, she would just pump in, like, what 2 items, and it would just say. Like, that's a more robust model. He would need a lot more data to just get at those 2 things to do to save $1 million this year, right? I'm sorry, lady, we don't have that capability yet, but that's what she wanted. She wanted the prescriptive, exactly step-by-step thing, what do I do? So we can get there. We can start share best practices, and the more data we know about you, the more we can say, okay, Bob, for your organization, here's the 2 things you need to do. By the time I get to an executive presentation, I'm talking to a leader, I better come with best practices, but I also better come doing exactly what their company needs to do. And we get there by understanding the predictive nature of things and kind of where they're sitting and where they want to go. So we're going to talk about change management in a moment, but it's really understanding, like, we understand today, we understand what's likely tomorrow based on what you're doing. What do you even get to next year? Does that make sense? Awesome. Okay. So this is more information we'll make available to you, but basically driving home the point that further along the continuum is better, right? So this is just information, descriptive, great, data points, optimization, gets into that decision and action point. Further driving home point, but there's different kinds of data. I think you guys get it. I was expecting maybe a slower crowd this morning. I don't know why I was redundant here. But basically more value, sophistication as you get up into predicting and planning and being prescriptive. This is a nice illustration of bringing together the narrative, the visuals, and the data. So when we talk about telling a story with the data, right, we're going to show you tomorrow some reports that we have that bring us together. I mentioned that algorithm, but we visualize it for clients as well. So you're not just take our word for it, like here's what you should do. It really brings the criteria together and evidence, like on a marquee slide of here's why, right? So they can buy in. So it's not a black box. It makes sense for them. So really telling the story is something that everyone I think wants to do. I'll make this available to you as well. These are common barriers, right? So it sounds like we have this body of evidence why people should take action. But raise your hand if everyone finds it easy to take action, even when given information. No. It's tough to make a move. And these are all reasons why. So who is familiar with analysis paralysis? Yeah. If only I've worked with so many engineers, like I need this 17 more different ways. By the time I run those analysis, well, this data is old. Or I'm not empowered to do this. All those things come forward. So when you think about where to take action first, think about what's a long and short-term win. Think about what's a first order or a third or a fourth order initiative that you need to think of. Who can give me an example from today of kind of a first order, short-term thing that needs to happen? Or an example of something. It was over here. It looked kind of like an angry turtle. Or a dragon. Huh? Scorpion. Yeah. That is a first order, first thing that you do, right? Before you name the swans, you take care of the scorpions. They cannot get back to work. That's a safety hazard, right? So when you think about short and long-term initiatives, think about, how engaged are the team members, so kind of where are you driving engagement, and then where should you focus most of your efforts? And that gets more into this continuous improvement piece as well. I'm breezing through these. I feel really bad about it, but
Don't forget, I could go 45 minutes or 30
okay.
minutes. Go ahead. This
So-
is all very good stuff.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. I got clearance from the tower. We're going to go ahead. All right. So I'm talking about feedback, and I'm teeing up this kind of first order, second order, short-term, long-term position with, we've got the data, we understand the story, now where do we go? So prioritizing action plans is often the next step for my clients. They're saying, okay, we've got our top 3 Now which one is first, right? Because your top 3 could be very different in terms of, you know, this is going to take a long time to get done, this is a quick win, this is maybe blocking something else, so we can help them prioritize that as well. This is a nice illustration of the whole process. So to this point, you know, we started with survey results, we talked about analyzing them, so that descriptive data, getting into diagnostic, recognizing issues. We're only here. We're only selecting and prioritizing what do we do. I talked about the modeling, all that stuff. You notice there's this whole other piece, and that's what we're going to talk about kind of the rest of today and tomorrow, is what happens with that data. How do we take action? All right. So just a quick kind of best practice scenario for you. I talked about long and short-term goals, do's and don'ts when you're sharing results with your team. We're going to talk about that as well. And then who knows, you know, the W's of action planning, right? You need to identify these for people as well. So developing smart action plans. I can't tell you how many managers I've talked to and their action plan is, well, I'm going to have a meeting with the team to talk through the data. Awesome. Who's going to do what? By when? How? Do they need stuff from you? You know, all these things need to be thought of as well. I heard some giggles, so that's awesome. Who's familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Okay, so this side of the room, south side. Awesome, no more from the north. What we're all going to know about by the end. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Actually, I've been talking for a while. Who from this table wants to describe Maslow's hierarchy of needs in principle?
So as far as we need to have our basic needs met before we can look maybe from an HR perspective at overall strategy and overarching
Nailed it.
happiness. Yeah.
Yeah, you got it. So this is a kind of triangle, echoing Maslow's hierarchy of needs is often presented as a triangle. So there's these fundamental or tactical things that need to happen in someone's environment before you can build certain things. So Maslow basically said humans have different needs at different levels. So first, before I can reach nirvana, which is kind of the top of self-actualization, meaningful relationships, right, meaningful work, those things that Jen was talking about, before I can have that, I really need my basics covered. I need food, air, water, shelter, right? I'm not going to reach nirvana if I'm really hungry, if I'm freezing to death. So employers' environment is often the same way. So tactile, getting into like my job makes sense to me. They're often short-term goals, addressing safety concerns, things like that before you ask them to move on to operational. These are usually within scope for the immediate manager. These are things that they can really tackle, as well as the tactical. Tactical. And then we've got strategics. These are higher order, long-term things that may be more systemic and flowing from the top of senior leadership. Does that make sense? So not only now are we saying what's important first, second, third, but what's important long-term versus short-term. So all these things help us prioritize and skip this leg, so we just talked about it, how this works. So we're going to together do a short root cause analysis exercise. Who's done a root cause analysis before? It's usually in like an IT environment. We're going to do an adapted version of that. Basically, you know, golden rule is asking why 5 times. Has anyone heard that? Why, digging in. So I did this exercise with 650 managers out in California last year, just to kind of give them evidence that you can really get into why people feel the way they do to a place where you can take action. So for example, some of the feedback from their survey was they don't like how the shift change came into being. So they used to have like 4 8-day shifts, they moved to 3-day, 10-hour shifts, right? And the feedback was, I don't like how the shift change was handled, it wasn't communicated well to me, I don't feel rested when I come into work, and it's really hurt our team spirit and my buy-in for the company. So what did managers think when they saw that comment and that item rated low?
They weren't good with change. They weren't good with change.
They weren't good with change. Oh, well, these employees wouldn't like anything we threw at them. They didn't like any disruption. They had their way, now it's different. They didn't like it. So no matter what it was, they wouldn't like it. Right. They also thought, well, I can't change the shifts. That happened. I have no power over that. So what was their plan before they talked to me? So I'm just gonna sit on my hands. Sorry guys, I can't do anything. Maybe we've got some really empathetic leaders. I heard you. I'm so sorry you don't like it. Nothing I can do. Move on. Right? It's just the way it is. That's what a lot of them would have said. Well, I pressured them. I said, let's look at this comment again. We read it together. I said, where in there are they saying, so I want to go back to the old shift? None of them. I read all the comments on shifts. None of them said, so I want to go back to the old way. The problem with it was, it wasn't communicated to me. I don't feel valued. I'm not worth telling, right? I don't feel rested when I come into work, meaning, again, that getting in the way of their fulfilling their purpose. I want to be here for the customer. When I'm tired for the customer, I don't feel good about myself. I don't like it. And they felt like it disrupted their team spirit because now they're not seeing each other in the same way, right? It's not helping. So can managers do anything about that? About people feeling valued and communicated, people feeling like they have the resources? Yeah, the energy, all that. So after we had that kind of turn, all of a sudden the managers were like, yeah, I can totally address this with my team. It's a way better scenario, right? All right. So I guess I'll just tell you the other story that we did. So we did this root cause analysis, and basically the idea is to ask why, but not like a 5-year-old, because you're all professionals. 5-year-old can say why, and get nowhere, just get in kind of this ridiculous loop of nonsensical babble. But asking why it's important to you. So Dave, do you want to practice with me for a second?
Sure.
Thanks. Let's talk about traffic.
All right.
Why do you hate traffic?
Because it slows me down.
Why is being slow to get where you're going a problem?
Because I was supposed to be at an appointment.
Why do you care if you're on time for an appointment?
Then I get charged if I'm late.
Who cares if you get charged?
My wife gets upset when I get charged.
Why is it important to you that she's not upset?
Because I should have left earlier.
Why does she care how your actions impact her?
The same bank account.
What's that?
It's the same bank account.
Same bank account, thank you. Phone a friend over here.
Why would it bother her if you negatively impacted the bank account that you guys share?
Because we both work very hard for our money.
So it's kind of a value assessment of, are you valuing her time, are you valuing others' time, but also this kind of bond of trust that you're going to take as much care of that bank account as she is, right? So you don't want to go somewhere, you don't like traffic because it might impact your ability to protect that nest egg, right? And whether that nest egg is the money that you and your wife both put away, or whether it's the relationship that you're building with that client that you're meeting, right? Or dentist appointment or whatever, like you're building relationships, so you need to be accountable for that time. You need to honor their time as much as you value your wife's time. Does that make sense? So I can't do anything about traffic. I'm not going to give you, okay, you said you hate it, so you get a helicopter. I've talked to Frank from JSSI, you get a plane. Cessna for David. Like, I can't do that. I can't do anything about traffic, but can I help you with how you're able to protect your relationships or protect like your nest egg? I can give you tools and strategies for that, right? Yeah. So that's a good example of kind of why is that important to you? Why is this a problem? What is that? So in getting past kind of the obstacle to what about that obstacle is a problem. Yes?
I guess I just want to make an observation
Yeah, please.
about how you did that, is that, you know, they're not just wise for wise sake, but I think there's a talent to, I mean, you were doing it live there, but following the meaning.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the thing that's important, it's why, what is behind that reaction that
What are you holding on to? What's kind of this pet thing?
Yeah.
What is Dave holding on to that is really important to him that he's not able to hold as closely if this thing is going on?
And you know what I think probably happens, I mean, you've done this way more than I have, but you get to some very profound meaning. He cares about his nest egg with his wife. I mean, that's pretty intimate and pretty, and when you're asking employees, I mean, I do something a little bit like this.
Mm-hmm.
Executives are blown away at how employees care, but they often don't get a chance to express how they care.
Yeah. Well, I love your point, and thank you. One of the other comments that we practiced this with was from employees from the same client. There was a comment that there's a real feeling of us versus them in this culture. You know, the CEOs and their friends walk through the aisles in their suits, and they don't say hi, and we just feel like they don't care about us. I said, so what's the answer? You buy everyone suits, no one has a problem, right? We get everyone the same dress code, this feeling of us versus them goes away. And they were like, Brittany, why did we fly you out here? You sound dumb. It's like, that does sound dumb. That's not a good answer, right? A lot of managers would take a similar scenario and say, well, I'll just give everyone a raise. It's like, well, that's not what they want, right? They don't want suits. They want a hello. They want a how are you? They want a, let's budget time. As we know we're walking through, let's take 5 minutes and say hi to a couple people, right? Make sense? We've got it. You did it. What can I do? What if I don't have the information? And how to lend with other messaging. So again, this is what if I can't do anything about shifts? What if I don't know what's really bothering them? Well, this will get at all those pieces, right? We went through it. We did the debrief. Excellent. Gaining buy-in. Oh, so this is, I think that this is the last thing I'll cover, and I'll hand off to you. But essentially, the connection between taking action and communicating about the action. So this is kind of the culmination of everything we've talked about today. So I'm going to do a little dance with my arms. Who can tell me what happens when results are shared? So the CEO gets up, he's like, 87%, and no action's taken. Let's say this is positive, negative. What happens to participation rates and favorability scores when results are delivered and no action's taken? Say stop when you think my arm is demonstrating what happens. Stop. Here. Yeah, they nosedive. Oh, you reminded me what the problems were, but I'm not seeing anything happen from it. You're right. Let's do one other, or a couple others. What happens when no results are communicated, but action starts happening? Who can tell me?
Stop.
Here? More like a shallow nosedive?
Yeah.
It's more like this. Right? I'm tired. I'm bored. All right. I can like see my reflection. It look kind of wobbly. So that's what I was going for. Basically, things start happening in the environment around me. Like I notice, oh, this is different. Oh, we got a little more flexible PTO request system. That's cool. But I don't know why that's happening. So now my understanding of my connection with the company is kind of haphazard. I can attribute these changes to anything. So maybe while I'm happier with these things, do I feel empowered at all?
No.
Do I feel like my voice was valued at all? Do I have a closer relationship with the organization now than I did before? No. Why? Why should I? There's no string pulling that together. You tighten laces on your shoe, it's not bringing us together, right? Okay. What happens when results are communicated and actions are taken? For sure. So what Frank was saying about branding them, those things, that's great. I have another client who's doing that as well. Everything on there has a little sticker of like, this is because you said you wanted it, right? Everything they're doing, or they'll sign off.
We do offer a seal, so if you want something.
You offer a seal.
Yeah, already pre-made, we can send it to you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Go ahead.
No, you're right. I forgot. That's new. Because we've seen it work, we're like, done. Again, we're a wish maker foundation, I guess, or whatever, boutique. I love it. So yeah, and then by the end of the cycle, now everyone in the company is like, that's because I said that. Or like, I had a comment about this, you guys. Like, I said this. That's awesome. Or when a manager gets to deliver something, they're reminded, oh, that's because of this, right? So I love it. I love that. And this is a key message. The platform is what I said earlier. Basically, you're not over-promising by saying, I heard you, I care, I promise to do something, and you'll be involved, and we're going to check in, right? No matter what the problem is, no matter if you're coming up from 35% favorability, you're in the tank, you're trying to go up, or you're doing really well, this is not over-promising anything. What is this doing? It's building trust, transparency, it's building that communication feedback loop, right? We're going to come back. This isn't a one-time thing, it's going to keep going. And then a stakeholder management system. So this is more like change management, project management. They're getting into, we're going to have a town hall, we're going to have a follow-up survey, we're going to have an email that goes out, and who's going to send it? This might be the CEO, maybe a function leader, maybe a survey champion, you've got an employee who's going to be a spokesperson, right? And think about how we're going to deliver these messages throughout the course of the time. And now I can hand off to Dave. You have the right amount of time.
Awesome.
Yeah. I love this part. You guys are going to really like it.
Hand off like a football?
I don't know.
Football fans
I don't
out
know.
there. All right. End of the day, change management exercise. Everybody stand up.
Oh, not everyone at once.
All right, now kind of shake out a little bit, come on, move the legs a little bit. This is an activity that I do in the executive room. After 45 minutes, they say that people start to get tired and they need to stand up. So usually they're looking at me like, what, are you serious? And then afterwards, everyone's like, all right, cool, I'm feeling good. But what we're gonna do is a little bit of a group exercise here today. So what I wanna do is, I feel like we've had an East Coast, West Coast, or North and South group here. So I want two people from this side to come over here and two people from that side to come over here. Preferably if you work together or if you've already met, we'll switch up. So, trying to create some diversity within the group. 2 people? All right, so I got two going this way, 1 going that way. If I could get, we'll even it out. So if I get 2 people to move to the right here.
I'll go over here.
All right.
I'll go over here.
All right. Perfect. Now, if we could all walk in a circular. No, I'm joking. That's not right. All right. So from here, I recently attended a networking event, and in the networking event, they called it the HR hot seat. Is anybody familiar with that?
Yeah.
Really great group. I had such a great time, and wanted to bring kind of that concept into here, but really around employee engagement. So what I'm going to do is, not yet, I'm going to walk you through kind of an example, but what I want to do is each group's going to select a topic that they're facing, whether it's made up or whether it's a current situation around conducting an employee engagement survey. And this is an exercise that we lead a lot of executives through to gain buy-in. Very basic change management, but really empowers them to get involved in the process. Simple as what I mean is really what we're looking at is what is the current state, what's the future state look like, and what are some barriers that'll be in place from achieving that future state, and what are the resources needed to take action. And you can see my nice diagram here. So let's do an example here. So I want to launch a survey within my organization. That's the current state that's going on. The current state is we're not, we want to launch a survey. We're not doing it. There's a lot of things that I need to think through to be able to do this as an opportunity. The future state is that end goal. I want to launch a survey to collect the baseline to be able to act on the results. What are some of the barriers? Well, as we talk through this survey here, or conducting this survey, we have people that are out in the field, we have people in the office. What are some of those things that I need to overcome? Well, we're going to have to do some in paper, we'll have to do some online, we have to think of the administration date. So those are some of the future things that we have to think through. What are some of the barriers as we kind of walk through this? As I mentioned, and kind of merge this together, what are some of those obstacles, those challenges? Well, senior leadership has been resistant, and what kind of resources are going to be needed? So we're going to have to put a team together to tackle some of this information, and from there we can develop out this plan of action. Now, I just ran through that at 1,000 miles an hour. I'll pause there and ask for any questions on the change management kind of methodology or process. Pretty straightforward on what I'm looking for. Brittany, any questions on this?
I would ask if anyone can kind of summarize what he's asking you to do in your own words. It's a test to see if you understand.
The first test.
We're going to do it.
Pretty straightforward to walk through. Current state, future state, barriers, resources. All right, what I'm going to do now, and feel free, you can sit back down now that you got some blood going. The first thing that I want you to do is talk together as a group and identify the current problem that you want to overcome. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to identify that as a group. If one person's kind of facing a challenge or wanting to overcome, collaborate as a group and kind of share examples, and then you can select one. It can either be made up or it's something that you can, you're currently going through. Preferably going through as a challenge, but feel free to sit down. I'll give you 5 minutes and we'll circle back and lead into the next part of this, okay?
Well, you guys actually have HR departments, right? So then narrows it down, so which one of you guys wants to do it, I guess?
Well, not really, because I consult, so you guys see problems every day.
Okay.
Is that supposed to, like, problem that we're facing, or create, like, a problem? So you guys see, brand new, because if they're consulting, everybody has their problems, right?
Do you feel comfortable doing it?
Well, I can talk about my organization, and you can see how that compares to yours, and then what you want to use yours instead. and you already know, but I work for a startup and we started, let's see, in September, 15 employees, now we have 85. So we've never done management survey. So we'd be starting from scratch. And I have mentioned to Brittany, for example, earlier, maybe we should do a posting because we've grown so much. I don't want to wait a year to do an official engagement survey and see how we're doing. I don't know, we have a lot of leaders, not all, we have all the leaders, we have all the people. So I'm afraid that a year from now it's going to be too late. So that's why I was thinking of post survey and again, starting from scratch and obtaining buy-in. Also, our sister company is based on and for whatever reason, there's this stereotype in our minds about survey, and you see survey to our VP of HR, and he freaks out a little bit. He thinks of surveys as being anti-old school, he doesn't think of the data of the model as being I swear he thinks of like a paper and pencil survey.
Like the old bubbles, right?
Totally does.
Suggestion box.
All right, 2 more minutes to kind of narrow down that topic you want to focus on. So 2 minutes.
Barriers for your company make the senior leadership to buy in the idea of the survey. And because we have the same process in the market for so long,
So that's interesting. Yes, they don't value. Because I don't understand why. I mean, why is this not? I mean, obviously, why do they not following the process?
I think one of the other things you mentioned too is the challenge that you got.
I think it's even like how is it going to impact, show them how it's going to impact
meteoric growth. So you don't really have,
you
don't have a relationship.
Well,
the other thing you said that I thought was very interesting is one, it's a merger of very different cultures. So that
All right, I'm going to bring the groups back together here for a second. All right, what's the topic you're going to try to tackle through this change management exercise? Oh, I'm bringing the group back.
So we decided on how to recognize what's needed. So like, we're in this state right now. How do we communicate that we can change and how to recognize that process?
Okay,
Yeah.
so kind of recognizing that change.
Yeah.
All right, and how about this side?
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
Oh, what was your what's the initiative you're trying to tackle here in the change management exercise?
Starting from scratch with an employee engagement survey where there hasn't been one done in the past and creating buy-in with leadership.
Getting that buy-in? Okay, both really good topics. What I want is to dedicate one person as kind of the point person, and then the rest of the group, you are all becoming consultants. And you're going to ask them leading questions to understand the current state, understand what's the future state look like, and diving into some of those barriers and the resources that will be needed to take action. And if someone could transcribe kind of your outline, and we'll circle back and we'll kind of do a debrief. Does that make sense? All right, who's the point person who's going to be getting asked a lot of questions? Everybody points. All right, we have one dedicated over here. Do we have one dedicated over here? All right, and if I can have one person to kind of transcribe so we can report back, does that sound good? All right, I'll give you about 10, 15 minutes for this to give you a little bit of time to dive in this. But I really challenge you with what Brittany was mentioning earlier about getting to the why and making sure you're not just stopping at that initial surface level reason. Try to probe in even deeper and understand what is that root cause. So you use some of those tips that you've already leveraged, and we'll circle back and kind of walk through these examples. So.
No survey, so you want to evaluate where the employees are at, the management teams are at right now. You guys have a lot of like turnover.
Is this person really going to do this, still, or what other qualifications do I need, or where do I get a look for, and then you can, something a little bit different, like we hire counsel. So, hey, we don't have any let's look into that, so that's kind of like the reason for practice, and also, because we're building our, we start doing our AAP, so we want to make sure that, things are being, properly, and we have, proof that we're actually being fair, right? So I don't know, maybe that kind of communication is historically managers, or reiterate, something.
On the action plan, are you giving, managers,
Well, it doesn't step back. So, yeah, current state for like why it's important, right? So we have like, talk about like, applications, the database applications, a lot in there, right? So, why, what's happening to those that are causing you.
Okay, so before the job descriptions were like so out there, second, the requirements of the qualifications were realistic. So, if you say you want this person to have a bachelor's, everything you're hiring is someone that doesn't.
In terms of
Then why do you require it? If you want them to have
could you envision doing,
or does this position really mean that? So that we can, I started to notice like certain people or like a variety of different types of different types of skills and doesn't, so it has to be licensure. So it gets really difficult to say, I'm going to pay you 50, I'm going to pay you 40, I'm going to pay you 70. So you could pay people appropriately and actually get the right candidates for the position, and also
that's part of the current
know what the person is
like a
doing,
problem.
what's the real job, and also like what is it to do, what kind of qualifications is it, what is their education, what is their job experience.
So once you have that standardized, that process in place, why is that important?
When you hire, you have a great outline of training, a job description of what this person is supposed to do, what are their goals, what are their expectations or responsibilities or duties. Yeah.
Having a clear job description, and also the service that we can kind of either onboard or
to be honest, I think that we'll be fine. We just, we're too young of an organization. That's why I was thinking if we could start with a full survey. That's where we were.
speaking of, you said there were 3 items, one was that, what was the other?
To be honest, I think long term, we have a contract for 7 years.
Right, so if you have a standardized job description, or standardized candidates to know what
Illinois is 100 years old.
Oh, okay.
It's centennial, so that's 10%.
For what we do, you do want certain counselors to have some check.
And those are important because
you don't want to bring you don't want to bring, someone that's been a teacher and has all of these degrees and really never experienced any type of counseling.
So ultimately, having like a clear job description,
the future
will allow that person to measure for certain criteria.
And that's what we based our hiring and our recruiting processes upon, bringing in employees that embrace that embody our values.
And also I think it's a good tool for the but really look at it and see what you're looking at. Get some of the questions that you're gonna, interview, and what is it you're looking for? What is the job entail? So you're asking them some questions, trying to help plan interview program,
recent graduates from
So,
public university,
going back to our
from a
first page,
disadvantaged
we
background.
have the fact that
That's where
the
job business.
job description will be updated.
Are there any other, key blockages?
So that would be great from a consulting perspective, we can shed light on what do you think we should be on the lookout for?
Well, let's assume that there are a couple of blockages that I identified. One, there is not terribly supported.
I only mentioned, just one person.
Yeah, well, okay, and the fact that, there's no, like, track record. So imagine, you can't do anything about the first one. The second thing you can do, imagine that we went and did the 5 whys with NDP and there was meeting lines. So that's out of the way. Do you foresee any other barriers?
Because they'll say, a lot of times it's really much revising.
I think we're in a great place to start fresh, to start trying to do, where we can get, I think some kind of excited about this. They're the ones that really get what's weird,
And there's a hiring manager as well, so, they don't want to be able to sit down and say, let me think this is, this is like 10 years ago,
So this first go around basically, we can't try to so
they're not
if we
doing like 5
don't,
bullets.
on this adjustments on the bills or explain why you can't.
So like communicating like that need to like
What was that? So we just have to do it right this first.
So it sounds like the goal is to go for homework.
Yeah, really wanting to own up to the,
And kind of live that focus. What's going on, all these new people going on.
why it's important, not only to their department, but to the company as a whole.
Well, and with a low turnover, it doesn't stop.
We're gonna get like some people have only been in their jobs for a month.
Okay.
There's that.
Okay, gotcha.
You could win through it.
And also getting, getting the faith really the faith is not just focus on
outside of just
that. The person is one of the things that my AD
employees feel that we're living up to our values. Do they feel that we're honest, we're collaborative, keeping it simple, we're thinking long term?
we need
These are these quote unquote, we're new, are we really all? I think so, I know it is.
And she has to leave. That's not. Where there's
So that's a barrier and lack of motivation.
Yes.
Why do I care?
That's a little bit, a lot of work. Yes. She sits before her, she has to leave. And one of my, yeah. Is everything?
Not a lot of times.
How can you?
So we have an option.
We're just one time.
Who's the solid line? Somebody in your
We have a director.
So maybe another action would be,
Two people in employee engagement, one for science, one for marketing, another actually the community volunteer.
She has 2 leads. She has 2 leads, right? I said, well, you could promote one of the people that are leaders for a year or so to a program. I said, but to do that, I need to
so did I.
have a lot of staff, and you're still coming in new,
The works on
the other person,
we're
to
all
ask for basic things, like, oh, how do
We've all
I,
worked
I'm gonna
together
write this
with
person up, what's one to one meeting, how do I do it, where do I do?
Okay, hey, I was just making sure it works. How much more time do you say? Another 5,
That's one of
7
the
minutes?
barriers that,
Yeah, that sounds good.
how do you
Okay,
get
cool.
out?
Just wanted to get your attention. Glad it works.
I can't help, you know, be pushing them to be their manager, you know, like, what do you do? 'Cause, you know,
You're gonna have a report.
okay, here you go, I'll send it to you again. I'll forward it.
I'll connect.
Yes, it was like, what happened to the, you guys sent to you before?
So is it fair to go to like now
Here's all the forms, here's a video.
No, we don't have no video.
Are they collaborative?
We have, for our department for HR, there's 5 people. And she said, she's really the person.
Yeah, that's a good point. To some extent, and to answer your question about being familiar with your jobs, really most people have come
That, you know,
from
she sends out
consumer packaged goods industry. So Kraft Heinz or Conagra, et cetera.
When
So
it
they come from larger companies, and they're not familiar necessarily with the lottery. Some are, but few. I mean, it's a really big thing.
As like the document.
That's a good, yeah.
There's 6 people watching right now? You 6 are troopers. Thank you. Appreciate
Even though they don't know.
Some of those, you know, the industry, because they come from global. Some are learning industries that have those in their team. In their role, because they're never going to be
It is a good
work.
because we do have a.
There, everybody is in a special role, or all rangers, nobody uses it.
Someone came in and said, do you have a petty cash form or an expense report? I'm like, I'm really trying that.
It should just be like a homepage.
Yes, there's, where they could just go right in the.
action items.
Every desktop has a little section that says FGC. That's how they describe the fund, because one of the things is a little thing that there's forms there. But like, nobody, and I always try to open it. No, you could go on, I'll get it from you, you know, you could go on your computer.
The survey will help us to determine our action items.
When you go on there, like the homepage.
Uh-huh.
Unless you set
What
it
about those
differently,
people?
but then you, any